The environment has to be
What we are saying is have a heart.
We've got to be able to regenerate our
There'll
economy.
be people who are kind, people who are cruel, but that's life. You can be bigoted about pigeons. I'm fine with that.
What's wrong with Singaporeans?
Why do we have the dubious distinction of being the number 2 among gamblers in the world?
I take it we're still not number 2. We haven't aimed for number 1 yet.
No.
Oh well. Okay.
What is it about us?
I think we are a hard driving society. We have a large proportion of Chinese in our population.
Yeah,
And they are more inclined to gambling?
Chinese are more inclined to get.
It would appear
I
so.
would have to confess that.
Well,
Yeah.
I've got 2 points on that. First of all, statistics can be very misleading. One of the reasons why Singapore's numbers on gamblers is high is because we are quite a tightly regulated society and the official numbers are there available. You go to other countries, it's guestimates, it's non-reporting of illegal gambling. So the numbers there are may not necessarily accurately reflect the level of gambling. That's the first thing.
They may be dressed down numbers as well.
Maybe so, but I think the reality is the numbers you get in all societies are not likely to be reliable. I find it very difficult to believe that we are. I've lived and worked in Australia, in the United Kingdom. The high profile of gambling as a culture in these countries is a lot more than in Singapore. And it's been there for a lot longer.
But what if they take turnover or the amount of money that is transacted? Maybe we qualify, so maybe it is true.
Well, I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but for example, in 2012, the Australian federal government did a review of online gambling, and they estimated it's $1 billion being lost to online gambling in Australia, where it is illegal. Right? It's not allowed. The figure for Singapore for online gambling is about, I think last year,
300 million.
Yeah, they said about US 300 million.
Yeah.
So you look at these numbers, right? We don't seem to be, they don't gel with us being the second largest. So that's the first thing I say.
Per capita?
If you divide it by per capita, of course Singapore is going to go up because our resident population is, say, 4 million. More than half the people who come to gamble in the casinos
Are
are
non-Singaporeans.
non-Singaporeans.
Okay.
The biggest gamblers who come to gamble in casinos are non-Singaporeans. So you choose this very large pool, then you divide it by the small pool of Singaporeans. Of course, you're going to get a very high number. So we should not over-obsess about rankings and statistics like this, unless we're comparing like with like all across the board.
Fair enough.
And we're definitely not when we look at these statistics. The second thing I would like to say
But
is...
before you go on, I think it's also true that only 7.7% of Singaporeans visited the casinos twice in the year last year. So you're quite right, I think, in the sense that these figures need to be looked at more closely.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right. The second thing I was going to say is we have this idea that the Chinese must gamble. The compulsive gambling. Gambling is in their genes. They will gamble, 2 cockroaches will cross faster. But in 2002, there was a study done in Canada, population-wide gambling trends and gambling practices. And they focused in particular to the very large Chinese immigrant population in some of their cities. And they found that about 75% of the Chinese immigrants were gambling, and they found about 95% of all Canadians were gambling. So
Canadian Chinese or Canadians?
Canadians as a whole. Canadians as a whole. The Chinese were not gambling particularly more than the community in which they were in. I'm not familiar with the Canadian society. I've never lived or worked there. But like I said, I have worked in Australia. And it is a very strong prevalent culture in Australia to gamble. I've studied in UK. every high street in UK there's a betting shop. Not one. There's 5 betting shops.
Yeah, but betting shops may not be big time gambling, right?
They are very big.
Wai Ming, you wanted
No,
to say?
sorry, I can't rattle off statistics like that because I don't study them. But based on just pure anecdotal evidence, not sure whether the outreach program arising from the introduction of the casinos here, which compels the setting up of the national
Addiction services.
problem
National Council on
gambling,
Problem
gambling. So the money that has been kind of like received from the casinos have gone into funding some of these programs, and we have never seen TV shows with advertisements about problem gambling. So I'm not sure whether the statistics are skewed in the sense that there are more people being aware as a result of that. I think like what Dr. Winslow was saying, that you see that statistics. But on the racial profiling, I do think that there is some correlationship with that, purely from a personal anecdotal evidence. I've done some casino work, in Australia, and been to Macau many times, been to Philippines, all these casinos, and you see the profile of the gamblers. They are largely Asians. But interestingly, when you look at the profile in Australia, the local Aborigines, they get dough every week. On Wednesday they get the money. On Thursday they go and gamble. On Thursday Friday they're broke. So they live out the days like that until the next Wednesday comes, to get the money in, and then they go. So the profile is that I think the poorer you are, the less educated you are, and the chances of striking it rich, the temptation is there. And then when you see the lines of people who queues up for the Singapore Hong Bao Toto draw, is an indication of people want to get rich quick. And I get a sense of, based on all the interactions that I have, the poorer the people are, the more they want to try. True. And that is, I'm not sure whether your statistics...
No, the statistics do show that there's an increasing number, more among the poorer demographics in Singapore.
Heartlanders and grassroots people, they tend to want to gamble to get rich quick.
Okay, but I still want to address this because we have here Mr. Suressh, who disclaims that the Chinese are more inclined to being gamblers, but we have counsellors here who would vouch that the Chinese are more inclined towards being gamblers. So, can we resolve this?
Well, as far as race is concerned, our statistics shows that the highest group is the Chinese. You'll be surprised the next group is
In Singapore or in the world?
Well,
Singapore.
as in Singapore.
In your experience?
In my experience.
Yeah,
in
but we
Singapore.
have the largest Chinese population here. We have a large percentage, so you can't.
He can say how many percent of his clients are Chinese.
Yep.
And we
Okay.
can see
How many
that.
percent of
Yeah,
your clients
sure.
are Chinese?
Now, it's easily about 60-70%.
But that would match the
Population profile.
Yeah.
Mine will be about 90%.
So that's higher.
Yeah, it's very, very high. For every 10 phone calls, only one will be either Indian or Malay. But
Okay.
you can be sure of them. The other, 9 out of 10 will be Chinese.
Okay.
And they always, like what you say, they belong to the heartlanders, grassroots people, the poorer people.
I have some anecdotal evidence to offer. If you look at popular culture, and let's look at Hong Kong, because Hong Kong has a private movie industry. What's one of the most popular movie franchises? God of Gamblers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That kind of indicates what kind of. I mean, you don't see that in Hollywood. Gambling franchise movie being a
Ocean 11, Ocean 12, Ocean 13.
limited, not really hits. What's the next most popular franchise? Tomorrow Will Be Better, which is essentially a gambling show in which the psyche of the Chinese would be, tomorrow will be a better day, I can come back tomorrow and earn all my money back.
Because your erstwhile company has also produced local dramas on gambling.
Because the Singapore audience enjoys it.
Yeah. So you're helping to educate them about gambling.
I think in statistics, there are different groups which have a predisposition or predilection to different forms of addictions. And when it comes to gambling and stimulants, so far the data that we are seeing is it's mainly Chinese. when it comes to alcohol and other things, there are other racial groups involved.
Yes.
I think talking about a profile for gamblers, especially those problem gamblers, I actually have some research I would like to share with you. There are some researchers looking at the betting behavior of those gamblers, of course just for certain games like number games. So then they look at how they bet the numbers. So when they choose the numbers, they tend to choose smaller numbers than larger numbers. So some of the possibility is, for example, if you look at your, say, birthday or street numbers, or some of these important event days or time, they tend to have smaller digits than bigger digits. Like, say, month from January to December, right? You have like 1, 2, 3, up to
12.
10, and then 12 is like November and December is also like 1, 1 and 1, 2. So we actually believe that there are certain percentage of people actually they somehow believe when they bet certain numbers, they may get it in a better, with a better chance.
That the casinos actually look at the profile of the kind of games that appeal to certain people.
Yeah.
So if you go to casinos in Asia, there are certain favorite games among the Chinese. So they will try to put that. And if you go to a casino in Vegas or in Australia, you find that the profile of the gamblers are different, and the table games are also very different. So, and because actually, if you see I don't know whether you've been to Vegas, but the Chinese population or the Chinese travelers are now richer. They tend to travel more. So even the Chinese, not Chinese, but the Las Vegas casinos who are manned by the Caucasians and so on, they are now very Chinese oriented. They hire Chinese hostesses, they change the table games to suit the Chinese taste.
They
so
should
in
know
a way
who
they are
to get the
feeding,
money from.
yes, they know where the demand is. And this is where it's very interesting where you look at both the demand and the supply side. The supply side knows how to anticipate some of this demand, and they actually see it and they actually feed the whole process. To them, it's market research, and that goes to the other side of the thing is that the casino install a machine that can only play one sort of games. It's very expensive for you to change, you see. So nowadays it's very, very easy for new technology to come about to say those games can actually be changed by the switch of software at the back of the code, and then you can play other games.
But the fact that Las Vegas is catering to the Chinese must also indicate that a lot more Chinese
Asians
with disposable income or
Yes,
Asians are
yes.
going to Las Vegas. Whereas during the oil boom, I don't
Sheiks
think
will come.
but not in the same numbers.
Oh, you'd be surprised actually. If you go to the casinos in London, the sheiks and the Middle Eastern crowd will patronize the casinos in big numbers.